Namaste, everyone. Hello, and welcome to the Foundations of Mantra Meditation 8-week online course. So I just wanted to take a couple of minutes in this video to introduce myself and let you know who I am so that we can kind of get my story sort of out of the way before we dive into the class, because we just have so much information to cover. 12 hours, yeah, is not enough really to get it all done. So basically, my name is Ian Basio, for those of you who don't already know me. I'm coming to you from my recording studio, which is in the city of Snellville, just outside of Atlanta, Georgia. So I've been engaged in this practice of mantra meditation since 2005. So it's been a while now. I mean, I've been a musician for a really, really long time, over 35 years now that I've been kind of at least semi-professionally performing, recording, producing music. So I kind of came into it from that angle. Basically, I went in 2005 to a yoga studio that was near to where I lived at the time, which was up in Pennsylvania, and started taking yoga and meditation classes. And at that time, didn't really know anything about mantras or Sanskrit or anything like that. Just so happened that the studio that I ended up at, which was, I really just chose because it was the closest one to my house, the teacher of the class and the woman who owned the studio was a kirtan singer, and is still a kirtan singer, actually. Her name is Claire Oakes. And she introduced me to the idea of chanting, in this case, in the form of kirtan, or this bhakti yoga practice, which I'm going to talk more about in the third video of this week's additional video information. So Claire introduced me to kirtan. You know, it's a devotional style of music from India. So as a musician, my interest was immediately piqued. And I joined her band. I played bass for her for a number of years. And she, started to teach me some of the basic ideas about all of this stuff. That's where it really began for me, was with her, playing in Claire's kirtan band, getting around the Philadelphia area to play with various other musicians who were there at that time as well. And music really kind of formed that connection for me into this spiritual practice. So a couple of things happened pretty quickly. I guess, I jumped ahead in my yoga practice pretty quickly, and felt called to dive deeper into it. So I went to a yoga teacher training intensive, and that was back probably in 2006, maybe something like that. And I was introduced there to a very powerful teacher. We knew her at that time as Rama Birch, but she's now taken on Swami vows. So she's been renamed Swami Nirmalananda. Swami Nirmalananda. And so I'm going to call her Rama, just because that's how I know her. But Rama was really the first person to present to me this idea of Sanskrit as a meditation practice, and the basic concept that in order to really get the most out of the Sanskrit meditation, you needed to pronounce the words correctly. You needed to vibrate the energy in a particular way in order for the mantra to do exactly what it needed to do. So she's the one who really first impressed that idea upon me. And we did quite a bit of mantra work in that yoga teacher training. That was all coming from a background of Kashmir Shaivism, that particular philosophy and practice within the larger context of yoga in India. And in particular, she was a devotee of the Guru Swami Muktananda. Um, so, it was everything in that was coming from that point of view. So that's where I began sort of this Shaiva philosophy around mantras, and then, this first introduction to the idea of, working with Sanskrit in a very specific kind of way. The next thing that occurred was Claire hosted at her yoga studio, where I was now teaching, a weekend intensive workshop with a man named Vyas Houston. Vyas Houston is the founder and was the director of the American Sanskrit Institute, which is located in northern New Jersey. And as the name suggests, this is an organization whose sole purpose really is to teach Sanskrit, and it was very spiritually oriented. So Vyas, who's a Westerner, he was given that name Vyas by his guru, and he came down to teach us for the weekend, and that was really, in many ways, although I feel like Rama really started it and Claire before her, this weekend with Vyas Houston was very much the beginning of sort of an energetic unfolding for me around the idea of mantra. So in this intensive, sort of the very first intensive that Vyas would teach, the first kind of class that Vyas would teach, all we did for the entire weekend was work on learning how to pronounce the Sanskrit alphabet correctly. Just going through the letters of the alphabet and then looking at those letters in words and trying to understand how to put the pronunciation of kind of random words together. We weren't doing any mantras or anything like that. There was no specific kind of traditional practice other than the idea that chanting the alphabet is a practice. But nevertheless, we went through a whole weekend doing this. What we're going to spend, maybe 3 hours doing. This was an entire weekend, at least 4 or 5 times as much practice. So it was really great. And Vyas is such a tremendous teacher. I'm so indebted to him and gained so much from that one weekend. Really just from the act of vibrating the sounds of the different letters of the Sanskrit alphabet was enough to start some kind of energetic process going inside of me and in my chakras, and that unfolding is something that's still going on to this day. Almost 2 decades later. So it was a powerful experience, and that really set me on the course. After that weekend, I knew that Sanskrit was something that was going to be really special for me in my spiritual practice, and I wanted to move forward with that and begin to learn. So I started learning on my own after that. I don't know that I really have quite the degree of concentration outside of something that I can look at as being a specific sort of spiritual practice. I don't know that I have that much concentration to be able to have been able to continue the courses at American Sanskrit Institute, because it gets pretty intense. So I just was learning on my own, more learning specifically about mantras, but now having this kind of background in understanding how to pronounce the sounds. And so really getting much more even at that point out of my mantra practice than I had been. So it was at that point, maybe late 2006 leading into 2007, that I met my next teacher, who I looked upon as being a guru for me for quite a few years after that. And it's tricky, but In any case, this woman's name, she goes by the name Sri Karnamai. That's how you will encounter her out in the world. She has a couple of different names, but that's the most common one that she's referred to by people who are not actually her devotees. So Karnamai lives in southern India. She has an ashram outside of Bangalore, and back pre-pandemic, she was traveling the world on a regular basis. So she would do a tour around the world from India, go all through the United States, Europe, Asia, Australia, various different, all hitting all the continents, let's just say. And so, I got to see her quite often. I first began to see her when I was up in Pennsylvania, when she would come up there. And then when I moved to Atlanta, I found that there was a very vibrant community of her devotees here, most of whom were Indian. At Karnamai's events, it would be, I don't know, 90% Indians, pretty much. So really well known by the Indian community, not so much by the Western yoga community. Like kind of different if you go to see different guru, Amritanandamai, we call it Amici or the Hugging Saint, is a lot of Westerners. There'll be a bunch of Indians too, but I'd call it maybe 50-50 at the events that I've been to there, as opposed to 90-10 Indian to Westerners at the Karnamai events. But in any case, there was a pretty vibrant community here in Atlanta when I moved here. And it was really great because she would come here and spend quite a bit of time. I got to spend much more time with her while I was here than I did when I was up in Pennsylvania. And I'm not really sure what to say. What's the really the most important thing to say here about her? She changed my life in so many ways, and during the course we will have much deeper discussion about gurus and how you may want to engage with that particular kind of energy. Karnamai herself doesn't really present as a guru. I tend to call her that, or to just say like I related to her as my guru. She never came to me and said, "I'm your guru now." That would have been a really weird thing for her to do. But I did have experiences that I felt were very reminiscent of the other experiences that I'd heard or that I'd read about that people had with their gurus. So I would say that, Karnamai is really the most the most expanded consciousness being I've ever met, is really, the simplest way to say it. I don't know how that fits on a spectrum of this, that, or the other thing, but whether or not she was actually existing in infinite consciousness, I wouldn't doubt it, based on what I experienced. But she was very, very powerful. She is very, very, very powerful. And I had some truly unusual experiences with her that maybe I'll relate, some of those stories to you when we get deeper into when there's some context for you around, who gurus actually are and what they can do. But the most important thing for this particular discussion is that Karnamai is the one who really showed me, in no uncertain terms, the power that is inherent in a mantra meditation practice, and just how potent these energies can be when applied to the transformation of your consciousness. It was undeniable. To be there chanting a mantra with her was, there was just no way to not be deeply affected by it. So the teachings that I received from her during the time that I spent with her really formed the foundation of my own practice, and deeply informs this particular course as well. So much of what I teach here comes from her. And I can give you, if I say, originally my first, or actually my second teacher, Rama Birch, came from a Kashmir Shaiva background. Karnamai comes from a Sri Vidya background. Both tantric paths, but one's kind of a northern Indian path, and the other one is a southern Indian path, and they relate sort of differently. The Kashmir Shaiva path obviously is focused around Shiva as the primary deity that they engage with. The Sri Vidya path engages particularly with Divine Mother. It's a Shakta path of goddess practices, essentially, and focuses in particular on an aspect of Divine Mother that we call Lalita, also Tripura Sundari. So that's a little bit more advanced than anything that we're going to get into in this course, but just so you know, I'm kind of coming at it from the point of view of a certain amount of Kashmir Shaiva teachings, certain amount of Sri Vidya teachings that I got from Karnamai, and also then my own independent researches into different aspects of mantra practice, to the point of, basically the deal is around 2010, 2011-ish, I'd been working with Karnamai for a few years at that point, and that was the point at which I really felt very much that she was telling me that we were done, right? She taught me an awful lot of stuff in a few years, and she was basically saying to me, okay, that's what I have for you. Now go do the practice and share that practice with other people. So I had to figure out what that meant. I mean, obviously doing my own practice, I get that, but sharing the practice with other people. I mean, I was already doing kirtan, but it was not exactly the same as what I was doing in my daily practice of meditation. So that's when I started to sit down and think like, well, maybe I can put together a course that will, kind of encapsulate a lot of the basic ideas that I've picked up over the years here. And then I can teach this course, and people can learn, some of the things that I know, and they can if they choose to, they can take that and incorporate it into their own practice and benefit from this. So that's what I did. It was very difficult to begin with, to try to understand what were the really important things. One of the most important things for me in putting this course together has been to make it what I call kind of a non-sectarian class, meaning although I have certain backgrounds, like I just discussed, the information I'm giving you in this course is not specific to one of those. There are lots of specific things to both Kashmir Shaivism and Sri Vidya. However, none of those very specific things are included in this course, because I don't know if either one of those paths is the right thing for you, right? So the idea is that this class is sort of a general foundation of what is a mantra, how do you use it, why does it work, and a selection of some of the most basic sort of general mantras, which is not to say weak mantras, right? Interestingly, some of the most powerful mantras that I know, but they're very simple and they're very common, right? They're all mantras that are practiced, all over India and in most different paths of yoga that use mantras in one way or another. So that was the course that I put together, and I led the first foundations course in December of 2011, and have been leading it regularly since then. Once the pandemic hit, that's when I, along with pretty much everyone else in the world, learned how to use Zoom like this, and went ahead and put the course online. Previous to that, I'd been doing regular ones around the city in Atlanta here, because there's a lot of people here. So that was something I could kind of continually do. But I was also reached a point where I was asked to, hop on planes and go to other cities around the United States for the purpose of teaching this course to different communities in the continental United States. Basically, I haven't been anywhere else with this class. So huge blessing, and I just really felt like Karanamayi's energy was really in it, and I felt because it was going so well and things were happening in a good way that it really was something that she was kind of giving her blessing to, really, and so I felt really good about it ever since then. From 2011 up until today, the biggest change that I made as a result of experiences that I was having with students was delving into research and practice of mantras, Sanskrit mantras from the Buddhist tradition. And that was because I was being asked a lot of questions about it. I really didn't know anything about it. Obviously, I was coming very much from a Vedic perspective. But I found this to be an incredibly inspiring area of study and practice. And I've really gotten a lot out of it since then, and feel really good about the idea of having incorporated a lot of Buddhist ideas into the course, as well as getting to practice several of the Buddhist, really common Buddhist mantras that everybody should know if they're going to be doing this practice. And that's really the biggest change that has happened to it since I started back in 2011. And that sort of brings us up to today, and me being here with you and continuing to teach this course and continuing to spread this energy out. But I just thought it was really important for you guys to know a little bit about where I come from and who I've worked with in the past, what the lineage is, so to speak, of the practice that I do. And there's incredibly, fertile ground in there for you to investigate in all of that stuff. So, like I said, when we get to the section on gurus a little bit more, I'll talk maybe a bit more about Karanamayi and tell you more about her, and if you want to, if you feel moved to do so, you may go and investigate more about her, and you may find that there is something very powerful there for you. I don't know. As we'll see, working with a guru is a very personal and intimate kind of a thing, and it has to be the right guru, right? You can't develop that relationship with just anyone. But that will be available for you to investigate if you so choose. All right, so we're done with this particular video. There's 2 more for you to watch after this. So I'm looking forward to seeing you at session 1. Namaste.